also had a moment caught on some kind of surreptitious recording. Can you respond to those?
It's a tough world we live in.
It's former Illinois House Speaker Mike Madigan responding to a question I posed to him back in, it must have been like 2018, 2019, about what's it like being caught on surreptitious recording. His response, it's a tough world we live in. He's facing 22 counts of corruption. Co-defendant Mike McLean facing another count. They are in federal court up in Chicago. And facing those counts, hearing all kinds of evidence. Somebody who's been in the courtroom watching all of that, getting firsthand account, is Jim Talamonti here with Illinois in Focus Daily, the Center Square, America's Talking Network. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for waking up with us. And Jim, we've got, of course, a lot to tackle here with the case and all the evidence that continues to pour out. So just be sure you're unmuted. What's some of the latest that you've got going on up in the Cook County, well, it's not state court, it's federal court. These are federal charges with federal prosecutors presenting all kinds of stuff. What's going on up there?
Yeah, yesterday was an intense day, and a lot of the Chicago media in particular, not to mention statewide, have been waiting for the arrival of Daniel Solis. When is this former Chicago alderman, who was secretly cooperating with the government for 2.5 years, who delivered those surreptitious recordings you mentioned, he took the stand yesterday well into the afternoon. We didn't know if prosecutors would get to him, but even before that, this was an intense day. Ed Moody, the precinct captain, old school campaign worker in Chicago, one of these ward guys who, got the vote out for Mike Madigan and was getting paid by contractors, ComEd contractors, while not doing any work for ComEd, but doing Madigan's political work. He testified at some pretty strong testimony, as he did in the ComEd 4 case a year ago. Then we got Alderman Michelle Smith, just to kind of give us a prelude to Solis about aldermanic processes and zoning committee issues, because a lot of this power in the city council consolidates in the zoning committee for approving developments. And well, who happens to have a personal law firm with a partner who did anyway, in terms of real estate development and taxes, Madigan and Getzendanner, right? So all this leading up, and then we got Special Agent Ryan McDonald from the FBI. This was his second turn on the stand. Last month, we talked, I think it was about 3 weeks ago, maybe 4, about his powerful testimony about recordings, about Fidel Marquez, the former ComEd exec, who also cooperated with the government to wear a wire. And at that time, it was, I don't want to say shock and awe, but McDonald was strong. And there was just recording after recording, powerful stuff on Madigan and McLean. And the cross-examining, the defense witnesses, the defense attorneys would try to, stomp their feet, but they had nothing. Yesterday was different. McDonald, in talking about Solis and how he was approached and how this all came together, was challenged hard by Dan Collins, who is comes across as one of the more mild-mannered defense attorneys in the room. But I thought Collins had a really strong day to lead us up to Danny Solis. And we only had direct testimony with Solis. We'll have a lot more on Monday. But just kind of getting into this process, how he was approached by the FBI, and even the setup before that, how he had been appointed by Mayor Daley, and how he, again, was he didn't use the words, but you see a lot of how these things come together with these old school machine politicians and campaign workers building the power base that Mike Madigan had for so long.
Yeah, and fascinating, too, to kind of hear some of those inner workings of how, investigators work with cooperating witnesses and develop these, deferred prosecution agreements, which ComEd entered into, and I believe other prosecutorial witnesses also entering into. But talk a bit about the FBI agent delving into how one of their cooperating witnesses' cover was blown, leading to reports that some undercover audio captured Mike Madigan.
Yeah, well, this leaked out, the fact that Solis was cooperating. He was secretly cooperating for 2.5 years. This would have continued longer, and prosecutors might have been able to get more powerful stuff. But there was a mistake of sorts that allowed this to get leaked out. And so then next thing you know, Solis's picture and name are all over the headlines as secretly cooperating. Well, at that point, Ryan McDonald said, there had been communication between Solis and Madigan and Solis and McLean that abruptly ended as soon as that news came out, as you would expect. And so at that point, there was no more communication. So the wiretap conversations, those surreptitious recordings that were delivered by Solis, he was no longer able to deliver those because at that point, even the most perhaps ignorant among us would realize that, okay, if this guy's wearing a wire, I better not talk to him if I'm doing anything. So the communication ended at that point. So we'll never know, if Madigan is acquitted here and McLean, we might someday wonder, boy, if that cover had not been blown, how this might have changed. But Ryan McDonald used those words. Actually, prosecutor Amar Bachu used the words, and McDonald confirmed them. Yes, Solis' cover was blown when that leaked out. And that, before that, I thought, or actually, it was after that in the cross-examination. I take that back. This was in redirect testimony with Bachu. In the cross-examination, Collins made some strong points when he talked about this, the setup that the FBI agents used with Solis. They were setting up essentially a faux deal for a land transfer in Chinatown, which was part of Solis Ward. Solis being the zoning committee chair, a lot of power there. And so there was going to be an arrangement for Solis to get a state board appointment, whether it be Rauner or Pritzker. It started out as Rauner, and it would have been in the Pritzker administration. And in exchange for essentially this land deal going through and Madigan's law firm getting the business. But this was, although this land was up for discussion and there were discussions about it, the investigators set up this deal. So Collins said, well, this was a ruse, this was a lie. And McDonald essentially been, well, yes, it was, but this is how we were able to get, we're able to get people like this, essentially. He didn't use those words, but that's why I thought it was a much stronger day for the defense, at least in those early afternoon hours to mid-afternoon hours when McDonald was on the stand, when he had been so strong, almost it seemed, bulletproof in his earlier testimony with recordings with the ComEd stuff.
But obviously, as Madigan said, it's a tough world. Something else I want you to elaborate a bit on. Of course, being in Springfield, I know a lot of the names that you're reporting on, and when I saw a name of somebody that I worked with previously in the radio world, it piqued my interest. Former Springfield Alderman Frank McNeil, he also hosted a show on a station here in Springfield that I worked with for 16 years or so, WMAY. But as a former Springfield Alderman, he was also a contract lobbyist. He had this interesting phone call captured by a conversation he had with Mike McLean, who was being wiretapped at that time by federal prosecutors. And this was from February 16th of 2019. And I want to just play this. It's about 1 minute and 10 seconds. So bear with us here.
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
I'm good, Frank. How are you?
Good.
Got a second?
Yes.
So you came by to see the speaker and talk about contracts?
Yes.
And he and I met last week, and so we're on it. And so this is his return call.
Okay, that's fine with me. If he doesn't, I understand, Mike. I've been around. I understand how busy the speaker is. So I was just trying to catch him before the schedule got full and see if I could get in to see him. But, I can deal with you, Mike. You're a good guy, so I don't have any problem with that.
Good. How do you like working for ComEd?
I do. And, Mike, I'm the low man on the totem pole, but, life is good. I would like to get a little bit more. I got a grandkid that I'm trying to take care of, too. So, that's why I'm sort of hustling a little bit harder.
Sure. I think everybody expected that with JB getting elected, there would be a lot more activity.
Yes, I thought so. That's why I was trying to get to the speaker to see if there was some more opportunities out there.
So interesting again to hear some of the conversation about, well, looking for some more work. I figured I'd go to the speaker. McLean saying, well, consider me talking to you, going to the speaker, in his response. But also indicating, hey, with JB coming in, JB Pritzker being elected governor and taking office in January of 2019, people thought there was going to be, quote, more activities and opportunities, quote unquote. So, again, just some of the, McNeil not implicated in this case, but it just goes to show and illustrate these types of, communications and how this, quote unquote, Madigan enterprise worked.
The tentacles of this just spread throughout the state. I mean, McLean being from Quincy, John Bradley, longtime Madigan ally, entrenched in Southern Illinois, very powerful guy, one of the contract lobbyists who Ed Moody was getting paid for. He got paid for a series of 4, starting with McLean, and for the last 3, Doherty to Kramer and Bradley, Moody testified, I did no work. How much work did you do? None. While he was getting paid by ComEd, and the only work he was doing, aside from his regular jobs, some of those jobs being in government, the only other work he was doing was campaigning for Madigan and going wherever Madigan and the 13th Ward organization sent him. So, and also here in Chicago, a lot of names in the Chicago political world, including some who could factor into the next mayoral race. With Brandon Johnson's poll numbers so low, there's already talk about who might be next. Names that have come up. Well, perhaps most prominent, state office holder, Comptroller Susana Mendoza. She's mentioned in one of these recordings. Again, not implicated in any way, but she was, when she was in the General Assembly, known to be a Madigan ally. Silvana Tabares, who's an alderman who was made ads for Paul Vallis in the last mayoral campaign, has been a very strong pro-police Democrat. She, too, former state rep, got the appointment, as we heard McLean discuss in one of the recordings the other day, essentially, quote unquote, appointed by Madigan. So, and the names, and there've been other names as well, but it's just how big this political network / enterprise has been, and what an impact it has had. And when you look at the composition of our state politically, you realize that the epicenter of all this was one 13th Ward powerhouse, Mike Madigan.
And he not only had that power from the speakership, he also had that power as chair of the Democratic Party of Illinois. So you can see how this is all starting to come together in the corruption trial against the former Illinois House Speaker Mike Madigan and co-defendant Mike McLean. Jim Talamonti with the Center Square up in Chicago in the courtroom. Believe you'll be back in there on Monday. In the schedule, they'll be in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we've got Thanksgiving, Black Friday, the holiday weekend. Then it's back at it the following Monday.
Yes, that's the plan. So, but Wednesday will be a half day. The judge has been very accommodating to jurors. He says, and I think I've seen this, he puts in pretty long days. The judge does. Certainly the attorneys are, but he's been very generous with the jury. We had a late start on Election Day, an early exit on Halloween. So that's one of the reasons, though, this trial takes so long. There's a half-hour afternoon break after an hour lunch break. So when you talk about government efficiency, we often think about pork barrel stuff and legislative waste, but there isn't much talk of judicial waste. But boy, you see here that the average person among us who goes to work in normal America, compared with the productivity in the judicial world, it's a little different.
It's a long slog sometimes when stuff gets to the judiciary, but it's fascinating to watch it all unfold. And Jim is watching history unfold right in front of his eyes and reporting to us. Get the latest at thecentersquare.com. Jim will talk about it again very soon, because we're going into January, possibly even into February.
I wouldn't be surprised if we go into February. They've said 14 weeks, mid to late January, but we've so far those estimates have all been off, and unless the pace changes, I think I'm hoping we get done before the Super Bowl.
Well, good luck with that. Jim, we'll talk again soon. Be safe out there, and appreciate all you're doing for keeping people posted on what's going on in that Madigan trial. Get the headlines at thecentersquare.com, and get that newsletter as well, and wake up with us each and every weekday morning with America's Talking Network.